Good morning, everyone. Gosh, I can just feel the energy in the room. It's fabulous, and it really pumps me up. So thank you so much for being here. So my talk today is about knowing, of course, but knowing what? Well, I've been told that I'm kind of like a historian, that I kind of prefer to look to the past to find the truth. But really and truly, that's where you go. When you start thinking about where did this all begin? Where did it all start? Then you go back. You want to go back and you want to look. Even if you've reached a place in your life where you have created something, maybe sometimes you want to go back and say, how did I get here from there? You know, it's just one of those things. So I looked back, and I always have, and one of my favorite things is the Vedas. And if Gilmore could pull my slide up, please. The Vedas are the oldest known written documentation in the world. And my particular quote is from the Rig Veda, which is the oldest one. And it's from a thing that is called the Song of Creation. This one is it was 2,500 years before the Common Era this was written. So it says, that one thing, breathless, breathed by its own nature, apart from it was nothing whatsoever. Does that sound familiar? Doesn't that sound like what we teach in this? We teach there's that one thing, that one essence, that one consciousness. Now, we're now into quantum physics. We can now prove that everything is one thing. It is one energy. We know that. We know that scientifically now. But now this was written over 4,000 years ago, and they already knew there was only one thing. How did they do that? How did they know? Well, we are immersed, and we are this energy. We are this complete, total package manifested in form to express this universal energy. So how did they know? Well, I think it's because of this. Consciousness, or this energy, has never kept it a big secret. It's not a secret we have to go out and discover. It is always there. And that's where I come into knowing. Haven't you always kind of known? And I would just say to you, if you're in this room right here, it's because you always knew there was something more than what you were taught or what you were supposed to believe. You were already in that knowing. And so through that knowing, you realize that even as a child, there was a time when something spoke to you. I remember one time I was doing something, I knew it was bad, and I was going to do it anyway. And then all of a sudden I hear this Cheryl voice. Now, of course, it was in the God voice that I knew, the big man in the sky, white beard, everything, keeping score, Cheryl. But it was like, uh-oh. And it was from within me. And so that was when the first time that I realized there was something that was in me. It wasn't outside of me. It was in me. It's here. It's alive. It's me. And I am part of this. But no, I am this. That's where you come to in that knowing. And so when this just blows my mind. This is why I love to go back in history, because this shows me that I am part of this thing, and it's always been known. Always been known. So could you take my next slide, please, Gilmore? The truth will always be the truth. No matter how regardless of a lack of understanding, disbelief, or ignorance, it doesn't matter. We have had this truth of knowing that there is only one thing. It's been distorted through teachings, through religion, through politics, through all kinds of things. We see that it's from a lack of understanding. It's from a place of not recognizing that voice or that thing within you that you always have known is there. Always have known. And you can go into disbelief. I don't really believe that. But there's still that consciousness that you can't run away from. You can't escape. It's always there. And you can say, well, I don't know about this. I don't know about quantum physics. I don't know about all this other stuff, all this energy stuff. You don't have to. You already know it. It's already inside of you. And so just next time when you're in that place where you think, I don't know which direction to go, just go to that place inside, that knowing place that always tells you the right thing, even when you're doing something bad, even when you're doing something that is not quite what you know the truth to be. When you're stepping outside of your truth, go back to that place of knowing, and it never leads you astray. So, namaste.
Dr. James trained all of us, and you can tell. That was beautiful, Cheryl. You were so great. Thank you. All right. Next up is you've already met her, is the beautiful Reverend Gail Morton. Please take the stage.
Thank you. And thank you, Cheryl, so much for warming us up to this beautiful theme today. So, as you've experienced, knowing has a big meaning. And so I think we should approach it today with a big, big conversation. You know, knowing means so many things to so many people, and it's very hard to define because it's within us. So as spiritual beings with minds and with bodies, how can I impart an understanding of knowing in a way that is valuable to you given its nature? Well, let's approach it 3 ways today: through story, personal experience, and maybe a little inspiration. So, my slide. Mm-hmm. Let's begin today. Let's start with what we learned from Dorothy Gail, her ruby slippers, and the story, The Wizard of Oz. You see, Dorothy had a mind, and that mind created a tremendous trip down the yellow brick road. And Dorothy had a body, and that body very quickly grew to love her 3 travel companions. You remember who they are: the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and
the lion.
That's right, the Cowardly Lion. And the truth is that Dorothy really approached her trip down the yellow brick road. She approached it and really sought a very tangible experience. That is, until she realized that truth, insight, and knowing were within her all along. You see, the truth is the magic wasn't in the ruby slippers like we were all led to believe. The magic was in Dorothy rediscovering her spiritual self as herself. And that began her knowing. So my knowing began very differently than Dorothy. My knowing began when I was just a young girl, when I realized that my father's legs were the wind beneath my wings. So you see, I was living in a pretty challenging place. I was wearing heavy plaster casts on both legs, and then I graduated to heavy metal braces on both legs, so I wasn't walking around very well on my own. And in the afternoon, all the neighborhood kids would come over, and they would dance and tackle each other all over the yard, but, I never felt different. I never was concerned. Every afternoon when my dad got home from work, he'd pick me up, take me in the backyard, and we would dance and we would sashay around, and he would make sure I could touch and experience anything that my heart desired. I didn't walk on my own until I was 6 years old. That's a long time. But I always knew I had a deep sense of knowing that I was enough, just the way I was. So when we were growing up, my parents didn't take us to church on a regular basis very often. And yet, I was always raised with the awareness, the true awareness of my inner voice and my keen sense of knowing. And I was also raised to honor that which can't always be seen or proven, but yet sometimes feels incredibly loud and demands to be heard. So let me give you an example. One beautiful April afternoon, I was out mowing the lawn when I felt an urge that was so loud, so powerful, that it was not going to be missed. Turn off the lawnmower, go inside, sit by the phone. It's your dad, and it isn't good. So I went inside, and I sat by the phone. And even though I felt a little strange, I didn't know why I was really sitting there, I had this deep knowing that I was exactly where I needed to be. Exactly. And even though I felt really uneasy, very uneasy on the outside, I also had this very deep sense of peace on the inside. Well, pretty quickly, the phone rang, and a very nervous young man on the other end said, "Your mother asked me to call. She wants you to meet her at the hospital." And I asked him, "Is it my dad? Did he die?" Young man began to sob, and he said, "Your mother made me promise. She made me promise that I wouldn't tell you." And I said, "It's okay. You didn't. I already knew." So that very deep sense of peace that I felt, that deep, deep sense of peace, it stayed with me, and it supported me, it comforted me, and it carried me through the hours, the days, and the months of grief that followed. This loss was very real, and it was very, very painful. But I knew, somehow I knew that even though people called my dad's untimely death a tragedy, somehow I knew that it was truly divine right timing. It was unfolding perfectly. So I shared these stories with you today so that we can all remember that we are all born knowing, each and every one of us. Like Dorothy, we can always come home. We have to simply remember who we are. Love only, forgive everything, and above all else, remember who you are. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Gail, Reverend Gail. Okay. I don't know if I really need to say much because this person, this man, his energy speaks for itself. It is my honor to bring forward the amazing, the irreverent, you've got to run for your money now in irreverence, Reverend William Conway.
I love it as you were talking, coming out thinking that it's their time to shine, which it always is. Thank you, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be up here and to be able to back cleanup is a big responsibility. I love the slide, if you could bring it up, that Reverend Lori brought up for me. I just love that. That's very nice. I love that sense of humor, that kind of off-bubble, not quite center type of sense of humor. So, my talk is out on a limb, and it's very nice to be there. All week I was wondering, what was I going to talk about? And this past weekend, we had our first camping trip with our men's group, which I tell you what, it was unbelievable. And a special shout out to Bobby. That man knows how to camp. And even though it's a tent, it's still glamping. I'm telling you what, the guy knows how to cook. It was wonderful to learn what is made for people who love to go out into nature. So, as I'm sitting out there trying to figure out what I'm going to talk about, knowing it's out on the limb, the idea of the tree just hit me. And for those of you who know me, I love analogies. I live my life by analogies. It helps me teach because I can grasp a very strange concept such as quantum thinking, quantum theory, quantum physics, and be able to wrap it around my mind. And so what I want to talk to you today about is the tree itself. And follow me on that journey of seeing the analogy of just a simple tree is your life in action. So we have this tree that's growing. It has rings that creates the strength within itself, the core. That is your life up until this moment. Then we have the branches that come out. Those are the different experiences that we're all having from day to day, be it from what you do as your job, your occupation, to the relationships that you have, or just meeting the person in the grocery store. All of those experiences are the branches of the tree. The leaves, for me, represents the individual thoughts based upon the limb, that is that experience of meeting somebody new. Those leaves are the thoughts that I have about that person or that experience. Now, sometimes, when the temperature gets cold or the seasons change, those leaves start to turn, they start to color, and they drop off. That to me represents the changing of our attitudes about life, to where something that was once very vibrant and very passionate in my life no longer serves me, and it allows it to just drop away and to become part of the compost to create the next experience of life. And now that I'm looking at my watch, I tell you what, my heart's beating, so I'm going to actually activate my high-intensity interval on my watch so I can get a workout and I can get my rings. Those of you who know Apple Watches know what I'm talking about. But that is the experience that we're having. Then we come to the trunk. That's the foundation of who you are. And you might be asking yourself, okay, so what about that? The bark, like on a pine tree or a willow, the bark that's exfoliating is your past beliefs, where you came from. Now, here at the center, we teach that don't disregard your life, where you came from. Embrace it. Learn from it. Know that those are experiences that help you in the now. So the bark on the tree, the next time you go for a walk, allow that to be an analogy that those are the thoughts that you once held dear that no longer serve you. And again, they fall off to the ground, becoming the energy from which new life and new experiences come from. So as we have that single trunk, oh, wait a minute. What about those trunks or those trees that have multiple trunks? I guess that explains multiple personalities, huh? But that's funny because that does work. I don't know much about multiple personalities, but I will say this, that regardless, the roots of that tree, regardless of what they may be believing this day or the next day, their foundation, their roots from which they get their good, their energy, their life spring from, is all still one place. And that is the centeredness and knowingness of spirit. There is something within us that is driving life forward to create the experiences that we want, to create the leaves on our branches and give life and beauty to everything. Now, the birds and the critters that live in the tree, those possibly could be a great view of the people in our life that come to nest on our belief system, on our story of ourselves. Look at me, how beautiful I am. But they come and go, depending upon the season, depending upon the weather. They come and they go. Love them when they come into your life, and love them when they leave your life, because it's all just the experiences of life. As you grow, become taller, stronger, more centered in yourself, you become even more majestic and more beautiful for those around you. So with this thought in mind, of that tree, the next time you go for a hike in the woods, or just walk your dog, or just go to the grocery store, the next time you see a tree, regardless of its species, know they are all the same thing. They are you and I expressing spirit. Because there's nothing that you can see, feel, touch, smell, or think that is outside that truth. So buckle up, Buttercup, and have a great day. Thank you so very much for your time.